I know that Mizzou fans love to make a big idea of the whole, like, production over potential type thing. And it seems like Drinkwitz is really good about doing things like that, except when it comes to the game's most important position. And so I'm just like, I'm kind of like, I'm skeptical. I know there's a lot of people that are excited, and I understand why there are people who are excited. But I feel like I need to see some things from this guy first before I really truly believe it. And to compound all of this stuff, and maybe we can get into this, maybe we don't need to, but Missouri has a new offensive coordinator. They have a brand new quarterbacks coach. They have a new quarterback assistant coach, right? Like, there's going to be some new pieces along the offensive line. He's also a lefty. Not that it matters too much, but like, your blind side is now the right tackle. Missouri had to go into the portal to find a new right tackle. So there's just like a lot of little things here that intrigue me about the whole Austin Simmons situation. But I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like, you see what you want to see in a quarterback like this. Like, if you want to buy into the arm strength and the leadership and the fact that he was Lane Kiffin's guy, I think there's reasons to be excited.
It's Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Over. Tucker Franklin hanging out with Maggie Johnson for a special portal recap episode. Maggie, how you been? It's been a while since we've recorded a podcast since Missouri's bowl loss against Virginia. How you doing?
Yeah, we didn't even really get to talk about the bowl loss at all, which we don't even need to.
Probably fine, actually.
Yeah, we're good with it. I'm good with it right now. I think everybody is probably good with that choice. So, no, I've been good. I've just been kind of, it's hard to say, like, enjoying my January, but enjoying some time off, watching some other sports teams that aren't my own, because watching basketball takes years off my life, I will tell you. We'll see what happens with them, but we're not going to get into all of that. But yeah, I've been good. I noticed you've been on a sourdough journey. I think most people know that you've been on a sourdough journey. Well,
the Chiefs, I started the day of the last Chiefs game, which was against the Raiders, right? And that game was laughably horrible. And so I was like, I mean, I got nothing to do during the playoffs now because the Chiefs aren't playing. I will be heading out to the Super Bowl this week if you guys listen to this. So I'll be out there doing some content out there. Just some, nothing like too super serious content, right? I should say. We're just goofing around out there basically at the Super Bowl. An excuse for me to go to San Francisco, I guess. But I was like, what better way to do than to just start some sourdough? Is what happened really was I was laying in bed and got recommended some like videos, right? I think it was either Instagram or TikTok.
The algorithm gotcha.
It was like, oh, this is how you make a sourdough starter. And I was like, that's it? Like, that's the only thing it's just flour and water? I was like, if people complain about how hard this is, oh, I can do that. It is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But it's so interesting because it's not complicated. It's simple, but it's not easy, if that makes sense.
It's like time consuming because you have to like check on it every few hours.
Speaking of, I probably got to check on it here in a little bit, just to make sure that we're getting them nice and getting Chungus nice and strong. But yeah, I just decided, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just try going on the sourdough. I made a couple loaves so far. Haven't made a loaf in a minute just because of going out of town. I've been traveling a lot, so the dough is time consuming as well. Like, it takes like 2 days before you make a loaf of bread. So that's been fun. That's been a nice little thing to keep my mind off of, Mizzou basketball, of the ups and downs of that and other things. But yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since we recorded a show. I figured we get on here and talk about the transfer portal, because the other part of it is Maggie, is that things change so quickly during the transfer portal. Those 2 weeks that the transfer portal opened pretty soon after Missouri's bowl game. After against Virginia, Missouri had some entrances. They had some additions, right? So like the way that the portal went, there's plenty to talk about in that regard. And so we kind of wanted to wait until the dust settled a little bit before we got on here to talk about what all happened in the transfer portal. So we did. We waited for the dust to settle. We brought on Cody Goodwin. Cody Goodwin, excuse me. Shout out to Cody. That guy's the best, man. I've loved his work on the Mizzou beat since he came in on the
PowerMizzou hit a home run.
The best they possibly could have done for filling Gerard's shoes there with Cody. He's the best. Love talking to him, and big Chiefs guy as well. I've talked to him a lot more about the Chiefs than I have Mizzou in the past, but glad to have him on the program today.
Yeah, no, he's great. And you guys have heard us talk a lot on the podcast about how it's hard to get super invested in the transfer portal and in NIL because things change so quickly. So it's nice to have somebody like Cody come on who's following it really closely, can tell you all the position groups, all the guys they brought in, all the guys that left, and just give like an honest opinion on it, more than what you and I would know. I mean, we see the guys come in, like obviously we see when Austin Simmons came in, we see when Caden Lee came in. We know these are big names, these are good gets, but to really get it broken down by somebody like Cody over at PowerMizzou, and you should, if you don't belong to PowerMizzou, you can get even more in-depth information on PowerMizzou. So definitely subscribe to that. But yeah, no, Cody does great, and I'm excited for everybody to get to hear what he has to say on the back end of the pod.
100%. Look, we're not paid by Gabe or by Cody at all to say the nice things that we do about PowerMizzou, but it is true. Like, you absolutely, if you are a Mizzou fan, it is absolutely worth it to pay for PowerMizzou. Now with 24/7 and 24/7, you get to see all of the boards. Like, you don't just get to pay for one single board. Like, that is, I mean, it is essentially the same price, right, for that it was at the Rivals. I think it might be a little bit cheaper, actually, and you get to see more content. I can't remember how much it was over at Rivals, but
I have no clue. I'll pay it.
And they're always running deals too, so like you can probably find the deal if you want. But I've always, Gabe was a part of this podcast, so we've always loved and respected PowerMizzou, and Gabe is the best in the business at when it comes to covering Mizzou. You need, if you're a Mizzou fan, you need to be locked in there. That is a free advertisement. I usually no free ads for us.
Be like the best advertisement that we could possibly give. Like, I feel like we need to link this and like send it over to Gabe.
I know. Now we tell Gabe to cut the check. Is what we need to do. No, but I do love and everything that they do covering Mizzou. Like, if you're a Mizzou fan, you've got to be locked into PowerMizzou. And I'm so glad that Cody could join us, because he's the guy. He's the guy who's locked into Mizzou football literally 24/7, 365. That is his job, to be locked into him. And so there's no better guy basically to talk about the Missouri transfer portal than Cody. So let's take a break. We're not going to belabor it any longer. We'll get right to it. Long conversation here with Cody. Really do appreciate all of his time that he spent with us. We'll take a break, and then we'll have Cody Goodwin on the other side.
What's going on, everybody? It is Ben Heisler, KCSN betting analyst. Happy Super Bowl week to all of you. It is Super Bowl 60, and you know by now that it deserves a sports book that is built for the moment. We've been talking about them all season. Been great partners of ours. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60. It's putting you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. And listen, it's the Super Bowl. We've seen some wild things happen, and when anything can happen, DraftKings has your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. There's no bonus bets. There's no waiting. It all comes together for you. It's going to be a fun matchup. We got the Patriots and the Seahawks. Seahawks right now at DraftKings Sportsbook, a 4.5 point favorite with the total sitting at 45.5. You want to take the Patriots on the money line, you can do so just under 2-1 odds at plus 190. Me personally, I'm leaning towards that number with the Patriots. Now, in fairness, we've seen this number go all the way up to Patriots plus 5.5. I ended up grabbing them right at the very beginning at plus 4.5, thinking that line might go down. I still think it will. I'm expecting this line to close somewhere around 3.5 to 4. So I think you can still get good value with a lot of that public money likely coming in on the Pats. So I'm on Pats plus 4.5. I think that's the right line here, and I think it's a good opportunity. But remember, here's what you really want to know is that if you are new to DraftKings, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You can get on board the props. There's different Super Bowl MVPs. If you want to take the quarterback plays or the long shot variety ones, all those are available for you at DraftKings Sportsbook. But here's what you do. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Now, use that code KCSN, that is code KCSN, to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states, void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.com. co/audio limited time offer.
Cody, appreciate you joining us here to talk a little bit of Mizzou football portal. I think we finally found the right time as it's kind of slowed down a little bit. The portal's closed. There's not signings happening every day to get you on the pod. Cody, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm shocked that this, like, the week of the Super Bowl is the time to like rehash all of Missouri's portal stuff, because like, is there a good time to like stop and like breathe, especially like for you guys doing so much different stuff just with, you know, the pro side of things and the Chiefs and all that jazz. Like, I'm excited to be here though. Like I've been listening throughout the season, so I'm excited I finally got the call and here we are to talk Mizzou.
Well, in the past, we typically talk some basketball, but we haven't really been covering basketball that much. If you want to get the craziest takes on basketball, follow me on Twitter, because you're just going to see me in complete meltdown for the whole time. But no, I kind of just want to get into talking about the portal a little bit and what Mizzou got versus, you know, what they lost. And I think my first question, which is probably the most important question that everybody wants to know, is, did Mizzou do enough in the portal to be better in 2026 than they were in 2025?
I think the answer to that question won't arrive. I don't think we'll know until the actual 2026 season rolls around. And that's like kind of the standard answer, no matter like what team you cover when it comes to the transfer portal, because it's easy to be like, yeah, like Mizzou lost a lot of experience on defense and they seem to have on paper upgraded at quarterback. And like, I like the way the receiver room looks. I like the way the offensive line room looks. There's a lot of intriguing pieces in the secondary, right? Like, we can go position by position, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, we don't know how this is going to look, right? Like, we have absolutely no idea how these guys are going to play. Like, we're taking total guesses, and, you know, we'll start to put the puzzle piece together, I think, starting later this month when Drink and the gang get together for spring practices, and they try to knock that out before the NCAA basketball tournament, right? And so that'll give us a little bit of insight into like, okay, like, how do we feel about certain players? Where are certain guys going to line up? Like, how do we feel about the secondary? How do we feel about the edge rushers? How do we feel about the offensive line? What's it like having a left-handed quarterback potentially now? So like, a lot of those little things, like, you know, we'll figure out some small pieces, but like, in terms of like, did Mizzou get better? Your guess is as good as mine. I literally have no idea what this team is going to look like.
Wait, so are you saying that preseason rankings aren't the end all be all?
I mean, hey, they're total guesses, and like, we're going to make total guesses for the next 6 months. Like, that's what we do in this content space, right? We're going to put the pieces together and like, okay, like, I think they'll be better here. I think they're going to struggle here. What does it actually mean? Who knows? So to your point though, like, Missouri keeps popping up after there's a lot of like way too early 2026 rankings that came out after the portal. And Missouri's on a few of those lists. Like, I think The Athletic gave them some praise. CBS Sports gave them some praise. So like, there's, you know, there might be things that are happening. That it may also be, you know, again, they're way too early. So who knows?
We got to talk about, I think, the belle of the ball of this whole class, this transfer portal class, Austin Simmons, seeming like a kind of a surprise as in terms of a transfer quarterback. He entered the transfer portal with that no contact tag. Pretty much when he entered, I think Pete Thamel reported when he entered that he was planning on going to Missouri, and I remember seeing that and being like, oh, all right, sweet, that sounds good. What do you know about Simmons? How that all went down, and what he can bring to Mizzou?
Yeah, I think that was Missouri's first like unofficial ad, right? Because he was still right. He's coming from Ole Miss, and he stayed with that team all the way through their playoff run. They got to the semifinals and lost to Miami. But yeah, he was like the first unofficial ad. And he's really intriguing, right? And like, we're talking about the idea of like, we don't really know what this is going to look like. I think like quarterback is a really good place to start, because you look at Austin Simmons and like, on paper, it's like, he was Ole Miss's starting quarterback to start the year, right? So like, he was Lane Kiffin's handpicked starter. There was a lot made of the fact that he had redshirted behind Jackson Dart, or you know, got to sit the bench behind Jackson Dart. And you know, like, there was, you know, he's wildly talented, right? Like, super strong arm. He's a lefty. He's tall. Like, he's a really impressive young man off the field, right? Like, he graduated high school early to reclassify so that he could get to Ole Miss early. He graduated from Ole Miss in 3 years. Like, he's coming to Missouri as a graduate student. Like, just brilliant kid off the field. Like, I don't even think he's 21 yet, right? And he's already like working toward a master's degree. So like, there's a lot to like about this kid. He's got great leadership skills. He has the arm strength, I think, of a quarterback that like, I'm not sure Missouri has seen maybe since Drew Lock. Like, it's quite impressive what this guy, I think, is going to bring to the room. That's on paper. then you look at like, okay, he played a little bit at Ole Miss, right? Like he backed up Jackson Dart last season. So he got in some of those, garbage time games. He was the starter this past season to start the year, had an injury early in the year. And then the whole Trinidad Chambliss thing took off and he never got the job back, right? The times that he did play, it's a little worrisome, right? Like the production was not like what you want for a guy that is talked so highly of, right? And so like, those two ideas are kind of like when this guy officially said that he's coming to Mizzou and he got in the portal and he signed and all that stuff, that's kind of where my conflict was. It's like, okay, there's a lot to like about this guy, but there's also like the production is not great, right? Like he's completing less than 60% of his career passes, 6 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, I think, over the course of like 12 games played total. So like, and also on top of that, like not a ton of playing experience, right? And so like, I know that Mizzou fans love to make a big idea of the whole like, production over potential type thing. And it seems like Drinkwitz is really good about doing things like that, except when it comes to the game's most important position. And so I'm just like, I'm kind of like, I'm skeptical. I know there's a lot of people that are excited, and I understand why there are people who are excited, but I feel like I need to see some things from this guy first before I really truly believe it. And to compound all of this stuff, and maybe we can get into this, maybe we don't need to, but Missouri has a new offensive coordinator. They have a brand new quarterbacks coach. They have a new quarterback assistant coach, right? Like there's going to be some new pieces along the offensive line. He's also a lefty. Not that it matters too much, but like your blind side is now the right tackle. Missouri had to go into the portal to find a new right tackle. So there's just like a lot of little things here that intrigue me about the whole Austin Simmons situation. But I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like you see what you want to see in a quarterback like this. Like if you want to buy into the arm strength and the leadership and the fact that he was Lane Kiffin's guy, I think there's reasons to be excited. If you want to be a little bit more like me, where it's like, I think I need to see a little bit more production before I really, truly believe in this guy, there's evidence of that too. And so for the next 6 months, I feel like fans are probably going to go back and forth. I myself will probably go back and forth talking myself into, Missouri's going to win 10 games or nope, they're only going to win 6. So a lot of it, I think, is going to come down to the quarterback position. And, to your point, that's what makes this guy so intriguing. And he's going to have a really big impact on what Mizzou is going to do in 2026.
And honestly, we might not even have answers until the first conference game, because we went through this with Bo Prabula, where he looked like a superstar in game through 4, and then to it, maybe he doesn't have the decision making that we thought, or that the arm strength, or all of that we thought. So yeah, we could get into that, but I kind of want to ask about, do you know much about Austin Simmons' injury? If it's one that had happened before, if it's like a plaguing injury or anything like that?
So far as I know, it was just an ankle injury, and it kept him out, or I think it was like sprained or something to that effect. And when he came back and he was ready, fully healthy, which I think was like, I think he missed like officially like 2 or 3 games, like if that. And when he came back and he was fully healthy, like at that point, the Trinidad Chambliss chain was just, off and running. And so, Lane rode the hot hand, and then Golding obviously took the hot hand all the way to the national semifinals. But so far as I know, that it was maybe a few weeks or a month after the injury, he was good to go. So as far as we know and everything we've heard, he's 100% fully healthy in Columbia now, getting ready to roll with spring ball. So I don't believe there's anything worrisome when it comes to injuries.
That's good, especially when you talk about a position that's been kind of a struggle to fully hit on for Eli Drinkwitz. It's going to be a big one, as Bo Prabula, as you mentioned, Maggie. I mean, he transfers out. He goes to Virginia. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away. How will you remember the Bo Prabula era and for the Missouri Tigers? That's what I want to know. But let's talk about the running back room, because this is a room that has a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? And there's usually only 1 or 2 running backs on the field at a time. I think Marquise Davis saw the writing on the wall of these couple of guys that they have are going to be pretty darn good, and they're going to be a staple on this team this year. So he transfers out. He goes to Louisville. Brendan Haygood, a young guy they got on the team, transfers to North Texas. Travaris Jones goes to UTEP. But they do also bring in a couple of other running back transfers, Cody. What are your thoughts on that room right now?
I really like the room, and I think it obviously starts with Ahmad Hardy, right? But also Jamal Roberts, right? Like 2 priority re-signings for Drinkwitz, for Chip Lindsey, for this Missouri offense. Like, the offense is going to start with the run game. And a large part of that is because you bring back the Doak Walker Award finalist. You bring back Jamal Roberts, who started, I think he started maybe 1 game officially, but like ran for 700 yards, could very easily start for a number of SEC programs. Like, when that's your 1-2 punch, like, your running back room is in a really, really good spot. And so, you talk about like the transfer portal and guys coming, guys going, like the other kind of not talked about as much aspect of the portal is like, who is Missouri able to keep? Like, who are they able to not let go into the portal? And like Hardy, you knew that was a priority, but like Drinkwitz, like there was a time in December where he, took one of his press conferences with us here in Columbia, and he was like, hey, like Jamal Roberts is a guy that probably has a lot of opportunities out there, and like his agent is talking and dealing, and like we need NIL people to step up so that we can keep a guy like Jamal Roberts at Missouri to keep this running back room one of the best in the country. And so they were able to solve that. They were able to figure that out and keep him. And so that's big. Like that's really big for Missouri in 2026. You've got your two stalwart running backs there. In terms of like what they did in the portal, like it stinks that they were able to lose some guys like Marquise Davis. That was a guy that I was really excited about, right? Like I think he had 34 carries in total in 2025, ran for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like you could just like, he was one of those, like, when you see it type guys. And it's like, this guy's going to be really good. Unfortunately, he didn't want to wait, right? And so like he's going to go to Louisville now, which I think also has a pretty deep running back room. So we'll see kind of what happens over there in ACC country. That's one of those guys that I'm going to keep an eye on and kind of wonder like, what if, right?
Yeah.
So they lose Davis.
We don't have any of those other running backs that went to any other schools that we feel that way about last year.
Is that Kewan Lacey's music? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that might be Kewan Lacey.
But no, like, you keep an eye on those guys, right? And so, yeah, you lose Marquise Davis, you lose Haygood, you lose Tavoris Jones, who didn't play a ton over his career, but he was here for 3 years, did some special team stuff, right? You lose a lot of depth. And so, okay, what did Missouri bring in response? I'm really excited about Zayshawn Edwards. They call him X-Man. He was an FCS freshman All-American from Houston Christian, which like FCS to FBS, we'll see how that goes. But like the kid could clearly produce. He's got 3 years left. So they probably sold him in the portal like, hey, we've got Hardy and Roberts. You're going to be the next man up, right? Because we're presuming, we probably shouldn't, but, this could potentially be Hardy and Roberts last year, right? Before they end up going and playing on Sundays, because those guys are really, really good. Who's coming in after that? Well, they went and got X-Man from Houston Christian, 1,000-yard rusher, scored, I think, 12 rushing touchdowns, like really, really good player. And Missouri and Drinkwitz have clearly shown that with his offense, they're able to take basically anybody and plug them in at running back, and they're going to run for 1,000 yards, and they're going to be a really, really productive guy. So then when you bring in a guy that's got some proven talent like X-Man, he's going to be, I think, kind of the next man up. He's going to be in that RB3 role, right? So we probably won't see a ton of him, maybe a little bit here and there. But when you've got good depth in the room, that's a pretty good spot. Like when your third running back is an All-American, probably feel pretty good about what the state of the room overall. And then behind him, they have, I'm going to probably butcher this name, Malay Fonatai, who is the Montana running back transfer. Not super productive, but he kind of, honestly, he looks a little bit more like a fullback than a running back. Maybe more Cody Schrader than Ahmad Hardy, just in terms of like physically what he looks like. But this is a guy that came from a successful FCS program in Montana, right? They were in the FCS national semifinals this past season. So there is that pedigree. And then they also brought in Maxwell Warner, who's a 3-star signee that I know they're really excited about. That's a guy who's got some speed to his game. He was a track guy in high school as well. So portal giveth, portal taketh, but also I felt like overall Missouri's running back room, that they did a pretty good job of restocking it. And obviously I think that's one of the strongest positions, if not the strongest position on the team going into 26.
Well, and it wasn't 2025, right? I think when you went to a game, you basically knew every single time that we had the ball that we were going to run it and try to run it down everybody's throats. So I guess leaning on that run game a little bit, you look at that offensive line, and, we obviously lost a couple of guys, some important guys, including Connor Tollison on the offensive line. Did Mizzou do enough in the portal, have enough people returning on the offensive line to be another top 3 or whatever running back room in the country?
I feel pretty good about the offensive line. So you lost Keegan Trost, right? All-American right tackle. He was a pleasant portal surprise, right? I'm not sure that they were anticipating he was going to be an All-American, but I think they felt pretty good about what they had with him at right tackle. And then you lose Connor Tollison, who I think struggled quite a bit this season. I don't know that he ever really got back to 100% after his injury. But that's a 4-year starter. Like that guy started 48 games over the course of his career. That's tough experience to replace, right? So 2 big losses, but when you bring back 3 of the 5 starters, that's a really good foundation to work with, right? Especially Caden Green, you got left tackle figured out. Curtis Piegler, who maybe a few too many penalties for my liking and for a lot of people's liking in 2025, but overall, like a really good player. And then you've got Dom Judice, the Michigan transfer, who I think he started at left guard in 2025. I think he's actually going to slide over to center, where he didn't play a ton there at Michigan, but when he did, it was kind of his best position. So I think Missouri should feel pretty good about where that stands. And then they went into the portal, and they not only got guys who I think could start right away, but they also got some really good depth pieces. So who are the starters? Who are the guys that are going to start right away? Zach Owens from Mississippi State. This is a guy I'm really, really excited about. He was included in 24/7 Sports Freaks list back when he was a recruit in 2023. Like, this is a dude who at like 6'6", 340 could do like a backflip into a pool. And he was also like a big like roller skater. So like imagine like 6'6", 340 with a 7'1" wingspan, and he's just like on knives, just like rolling around, right? With like really good body coordination. That's the kind of athlete that they got to plug in at left guard, right? Like on top of all of that, like natural athleticism. He started, I believe, 10 games at Mississippi State the last season. He started, I think, 11 total starts at both guard spots, right? So there's a little bit of versatility there so that they can maybe tinker a little bit during spring ball if they want to figure out who the best five are. But that guy's like, he's a bully. Like, he's really good in pass protection. He's a guy that's going to drive off the ball and give you some good run blocking. So there's your interior plug. And then who they got for right tackle is Josh Adkins from Arizona State. He has started 39 career games over the course of his career, first at Hawaii and then the last 2 seasons at Arizona State. He was on Arizona State's playoff team that won the Big 12. So there's really, really good experience there. If you look at some of his advanced numbers, a little worrisome, but there's also like there's been steps in the right direction and improvement over the course of his career. And so the bet here is that you can take a guy who's really, really talented and athletic, and you put him with, Brandon Jones, offensive line coach, who turned Keegan Trost into an All-American. And now you've got this guy who's coming in to plug in at right tackle, and you hope that he can make some pretty big jumps there as well. So those are the two guys that are probably going to start. So for those keeping track at home, your starting offensive line, if I were to guess right now, left to right, Caden Green, Zach Owens, Dom Judice, Curtis Piegler, and then Josh Adkins. That's a really good starting 5 offensive line, or at least it's one that I feel really, really good about. And then who are the guys that are probably going to back them up? I think you've got like 2 swing interior guys in Luke Work, who's another Mississippi State transfer. He's a guy that has played basically everywhere on the offensive line over the last couple years. He also still has a red shirt available. So that's something to maybe keep in mind too, if you're really big into offensive line play, and that's just something you want to track. He could potentially red shirt this year, and then he'll have 2 more years later after 2026. But he's a guy that brings really good experience, and he plays much better in the interior than he does on the outside. So I think he'll be one swing option. Then you've also got Tristan Wilson, right? Like a tried and true Mizzou guy who's been there quite a few years, hasn't played a ton, but when he steps in, the coaches feel confident. That's a guy that they know that they can trust. And then on the outside, they went and got another FCS guy, Colin Sorensen, who 20-game starter for FCS Charleston Southern. He's a guy that I think could potentially be a swing tackle, but then also the depth at tackle. This is a position where you're going to maybe start to see some younger guys maybe step up and provide some of those depth roles. Guys like Jack Lang, who was the 4-star guy from Eureka, Whit Hafer, who was the tight end who transitioned into an offensive tackle. And then they recently signed, as part of their 26 signing class, a top 100 kid named Johnny Jones, who I'm really, really excited about. So he's a 4-star guy that I think is going to be a pretty key part of some future Missouri offensive lines. So I don't know if that's the most offensive line talk you guys have ever had on this show, but when I told you I could ramble and go deep, man, that's
we appreciate the trenches talk.
Yeah,
it's so undervalued.
I think that was a great little breakdown of it. Cody, there's not many times in this transfer portal area for Mizzou that Mizzou's had a guy leave that I'm like, man, that's really going to suck for next year. I think the first time I really was upset about a player leaving was Joshua Manning leaving and transferring out. And the identity of this wide receiver room has changed a whole lot. When you look at the kind of the guys who went out with obviously Marquise Johnson transferring out, you got Daniel Blood transferring out, you got all these guys, James Madison transferred out, that you've been accustomed to being Mizzou guys, now no longer playing for Mizzou. And you got a bunch of new look faces in that wide receiver room. Seemingly seems like it's going to be a pretty good receiver room.
I feel pretty good about it. I know it kind of stinks to see guys like Manning and Marquise Johnson and those guys, guys that have been in the program and that have had pretty special moments, right? Like especially like Marquise Johnson, that season opener last year against Central Arkansas after everything that happened with his mom. Like that was really, really cool. Josh Manning, like a Lee Summit guy who would come in and not super productive, but like he had some fun moments. And, he was a good big body possession receiver that, the offense could count on, right? Like he was a dude that the coaches could trust. And so it stinks to see guys like that leave the program. But the portal taketh, the portal can also giveth. And I tell you what, the guys that they brought in to replace those guys, pretty exciting players. I think it's also important to remember too, the Kevin Coleman Jr., the slot receiver who, his fourth school in 4 years from Mississippi State, he's probably going to go make a bunch of money in the NFL after what he was able to do in Mobile. Losing those three guys, it does hurt. I do think maybe the biggest loss was probably Coleman, though, in terms of just who does Mizzou have to replace. Like he was the leading receiver this year, right? Like 66 catches, 700 yards. I think only one receiving touchdown, but he also returned the punt against Arkansas. So just a really productive player, a really experienced player. And that's kind of like, you not only wanted to go into the portal and like find a guy who has played a lot to replace the production, but you wanted to find a guy who's played a lot to replace the experience, right? Because Marquise Johnson, Josh Manning, Kevin Coleman, like those are guys that have started on and off. Coleman was basically a 4-year starter at every single school he played at. But then like Johnson started on and off over the last 2 or 3 years. Manning, I believe, started every single game over the last couple years. Yeah. So you want to replace the experience as much as you want to replace like the actual production of the guys that are leaving. And I thought Missouri hit I too early to say that they hit home runs, but you feel really good about the guys that they brought in to replace those guys, right? And so talking about Caden Green from Ole Miss, he's probably the biggest high profile transfer.
Caden
Lee, you're right.
I've done that I've done it a million times, and people have corrected me because it's so hard to obviously. Your mind just goes to.
I know, right? Like once I get rolling, I'm just like, yeah, name. Here we go. Caden. He's a slot receiver. But yeah, no, Caden Lee, the Ole Miss. He's the high profile transfer at receiver. He's kind of the Kevin Coleman replacement, right? Like not just in terms of position, right? Because he plays the slot. He primarily played the slot at Ole Miss. He's a 3-year starter down there in Lane Kiffin's offense. So there's a little bit of pedigree there, but also in terms of experience, right? So like he's played, he has started 25 games. He's played in 38 career games over the course of his career. And on top of that, he's also produced, right? Like he's got over 1,600 career receiving yards, 7 career receiving touchdowns. This is a really, really good player. I think best of all, quarterback loves him, right? So like when you bring in Austin Simmons and he's like, I want to bring in that guy too. I think as an offense, you're like, yeah, 100%. Like bring in the slot guy, bring in your safety blanket, like whatever you feel like you need to do to be successful in this offense. And so they brought in Caden Lee. They brought in Caleb Goody from Cincinnati. He's kind of the Marquise Johnson replacement. This is the big play, speedy, deep threat guy. Like he's one of the fastest receivers in college football, according to some advanced metrics that track those things. People that are way smarter than me that cover those things. But he's also like a proven deep threat. Like I think his average depth of target over the course of his career is more like it's 16 yards or 16 plus yards. So like he's a guy that they're going to throw him the ball down the field. He was one of the bigger big play threats in college football last season. I want to say over the last 2 seasons, he's kind of a serial transfer. He was at Cincinnati last year. The year before that, he was at Colorado State. Over the last 2 years, he's averaged close to 20 yards per reception. So this is a really, really talented deep threat guy that's going to stretch the field, take the top off the defense. So you've got the Coleman replacement. You've got the Marquise Johnson replacement. I think that the Josh Manning replacement is already in the room, and a guy that we should be really, really excited about in Donovan Olubade. So those are kind of your 3 starting receivers right there. 2 of them transfers, one of them a key priority re-signing. It's still weird to me that we're talking about re-signings when it comes to college football, but that's the state of the game at the moment. But I think you look at the receiver room, you start with those 3 guys, and then there's some younger, intriguing pieces that they brought in through the recruiting class, other guys through the transfer portal, other guys that they were able to re-sign from the 2025 team, like Demarion Folks and Sean Terry. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of fun, intriguing pieces behind those starting 3, but I think you start with those 3, Caden Lee, Caleb Goody, and Donovan Olubade. That's a pretty good starting 3 when it comes to your starting receivers.
Yeah.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Heather Lewis, broker owner, KC Local Homes, and Emprise Bank has been a great partner for us. They're our partner in Possible. Debbie and I hit it off immediately, and she was one of the first bankers that I would say sat down with me and actually genuinely cared about my story and where I was coming from and what I was trying to do, not just what kind of loan do you need, how much equity do you have, and she really kind of laid out my options for me and just made the process make sense. And I felt comfortable with it. Start to talk about it and think about it. A building popped up that I wanted, that I could afford, and it was in a great area. And so they really guided me through the SBA. I used the SBA loan to acquire it and really guided me through that process and made it happen. I think that we talk about that a lot, where we wouldn't have a business. We wouldn't have what we have here if we didn't have the clientele that we do. I've always functioned out of a people over profits mentality. The houses sell themselves, right? Like, I'm here to help people and facilitate the transaction for them.
I think it was very important. I think those are the three people that I really wanted to keep this year. I mean, it would have been nice to keep Damon Wilson. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, Olubade, Hardy, and Roberts, just keeping all of them, I think was so important to moving this offense forward, because we haven't had a lot to look forward to on the offensive side of the ball, except for Hardy and Roberts. So I think getting a quarterback in the room that you have confidence in, I think hopefully we get there, but I think it's really important. But I kind of want to switch to the other side of the ball a little bit. Mizzou went hard early on in the portal at replacing one of their biggest weaknesses, which was the secondary. Can you talk a little bit about some of that back seven, that secondary, I guess, and then maybe some of the linebackers they brought in as well?
Yeah, they basically, when it came to the defense, and this was after like one of the surprise portal losses in Marvin Burks, who hit the portal and ended up landing at Wisconsin. That was I think a big surprise, but it also was like the final domino of Missouri's 2025 defense, where the Tigers had to replace everybody. Like every single starter left, whether it was through the portal, whether it was due exhausted eligibility, whether it's guys who are going to try their hand at the NFL, like all 11 regular starters gone. And that stinks, because that was a really, really fun defense to watch last season. And so, the secondary was kind of one of those similar, like that was one of those position groups where going into the portal, we were like, all right, like even though we thought that Burks was returning, and I personally am a big fan of Santana Banner, they got a lot of pieces that they needed to replace here, right? Like the top three cornerbacks, right? Toriano Pride, Dre Norwood, Stephen Hall, all three of those guys, super experienced guys. Varying levels of production. I myself am a Toriano Pride fan, but I also understand why some people might be, frustrated with the way that Hall and Norwood played at times throughout the season, especially early on in the year when they were still trying to, figure some stuff out and mesh as a secondary. But yeah, like that's a lot of experience that they needed to replace. And so we knew kind of the secondary is like, okay, especially cornerback, you need to throw a bag at somebody. Like you need to go get a starter somewhere. And I believe they were able to get that with, are we sensing a theme here? They went to Ole Miss and brought in another like immediate day one starter in Chris Graves Jr. Now he was one of the later additions, but he's a guy that as soon as he announced his commitment to Mizzou, we were like, there's CB1. Right there. Like he is going to, I don't know if he's necessarily going to lock down one side, but he's going to take care of one side of the field. As for who's going to be CB2, like who's going to be his, the guy that's going to start on the other side of the field with Graves, they brought in some intriguing options. Like they really had to replenish the corner room, because in addition to Pride and Hall and Norwood all leaving, they had a couple of transfer departures. That they were younger guys that provided depth, that maybe this is a year where you maybe see them step up into those bigger roles. They're gone. So they really had to replenish this room. And so in addition to Graves, they were able to go get a couple of guys, Jaleel Florence, a cornerback from Oregon, who has some previous starting experience, but you talk about a guy that has a little bit of an injury history. This is one of those where it's like, okay, like this could be a really high risk ad, because you just don't exactly know what kind of player you're going to get, but it could be a high reward if he pans out. He's a former 4-star guy. He started for Oregon's defense a couple years ago. He's a guy that Dan Lanning went and found. If you go back and check some of those stories from 2023 and 2024, this is a guy that Dan Lanning really, really liked. So that's encouraging. They also pulled in another Oregon cornerback who I'm probably going to butcher this name, Sion Lalia, who is a former junior college guy who played quite a bit for Oregon over the last couple of years. They went and basically plucked Ole Miss and Oregon players to try and fill out some of these spots on the roster. But, that's another guy what intrigues me about Lalia. Again, apologize if I'm butchering that name, is he's really big. Like he is 6'4", 195 pounds. Like he's a really big, imposing defensive back. And I don't know about you guys, but I love my corners to be able to beat up the opposing receiver on the other side of the line. Like I want big physical corners. And so That's kind of the bet with this guy. They also brought in another intriguing defensive back prospect, Elijah Dotson, he's a former top 100 player. He played as a freshman for Michigan this past season. We're still a little bit in the dark as to whether he's going to play corner or if he's going to pivot and play safety, because he's one of those guys that can do a little bit of both. He played corner at Michigan, but I think if you ask all of the recruiting experts when he was coming out of high school, a lot of them projected him as a safety. So is this the time when you make that pivot? Are you going to stay at corner? What does it mean for Missouri, right? I think they could probably use him a little bit more at safety just because they lost a lot of experience out of that room as well. But that's one of those like spring questions that we're going to have for Drinkwitz pretty much immediately. Like, is this Dotson guy, is he going to stay at corner or is he going to go play safety? And then speaking of safety, you basically had before the transfer portal, Santana Banner and a bunch of dudes from the YMCA. Because like we just weren't exactly sure like who these guys were going to be, right? Like I'm a big fan of Santana Banner. He was a Northern Illinois transfer. He's now the most experienced safety that Missouri has in the room right now. He's also just freakishly athletically gifted. Like, I don't know if you guys watched the mini movie, if they did the mini movie after the Auburn game. I forget if that was before or after they had stopped that, but this dude did a full round off back hamstring into a like full rotational backflip when Missouri missed the first I'm trying to remember, field goal. Like, it was the field goal that they missed at the end of regulation that they thought they won the game, and the whole sideline went crazy. Yeah. And he did like a backflip like 20 yards down the field, and then they had to like rein everything in, right? And then Zion Young did the thing and they won the game anyway. But yeah. I remember sitting in the press box going like, whoa, like that's the type of dude that they have on this defense. So we're going to get to see a little bit more of that this year because Santana Banner is going to be one of the starting safeties. As for who the other guys are going to be, you guys' guess is as good as mine. I really don't know. There's some intriguing pieces when you look at the rest of the secondary, right? And some of these guys are returning, right? Like Trajan Greco, a guy who played quite a bit this past season. They also, I know the staff really, really likes Jackson Hancock, who's another guy that has spent some time in the program, and they kind of want to see him take some steps forward. So they're going to have their opportunities to do that. CJ Bass is another young guy who redshirted this year, who for a time, it looked like he was going to enter the portal, and then he ended up staying. One of those weird, like, athlete agent type miscommunication things. It ultimately sounded like when we were able to really dig into it. But he's a guy that the staff really, really likes. They're bringing in some younger guys as part of the 26 recruiting class. And then in terms of who they brought in the portal, guys that might ultimately play this season, Kensley Ledur-Faustin, from Auburn. That's another name that I probably butchered, but that's a guy that, he's got some. He's interesting because he's a little bit smaller and he's longer and lankier, and he might actually fit really well in that nickel spot. Even though I know kind of at that, what is it? Is it the star position for Missouri? He's a little bit smaller, I think, than like what Dalen Carnell was. He was big at like 6'3", 225. This guy's a little bit smaller, like 6'1", 180. But he's like lanky and he's physical. And so we'll see ultimately kind of how those pieces come together. There's also, Dotson may pivot into the safety room. And then another guy that they brought in from Notre Dame, his name's Jadon Blair. He basically redshirted at Notre Dame, and now he's transferred here to Mizzou. He's another like big body defensive back, like 6'5", 205, like just like kind of a monster back there in the defensive backfield. And so I don't exactly know what his role is going to be, but I'm like really excited about that dude's future just because he's really, really big, and Missouri has had some success developing their defensive back. So he's not a guy that I don't think we'll see a ton this season, but he's a guy that we could potentially see in future seasons. And so what does it all mean for the 26 secondary? Outside of Chris Graves playing cornerback and Santana Banner playing one of the safety positions, I have no idea what the secondary is going to look like.
It's fair. It's a fair position. Missouri's actually had a really good history defensively when you look at it of linebackers, of having some really good linebackers. And Josiah Trotter last year was a very good linebacker. They got a good one to stick around, and Nick Rodriguez. I think that they did a really good job in the transfer portal as well, bringing in some linebackers to kind of pair with Rodriguez. Robert Woodard coming in from Auburn, and they get Bobby Washington after the national championship game to commit to there too. What do you think about this linebacker room? Because they got really good production from Josiah Trotter last year, and that was one of the guys that I was kind of hoping he was going to stick around, that he would maybe give it one more year and see if him and Rodriguez could kind of, that would be a pretty darn good wide or linebacker duo right there if those two guys stick around. But there's been a lot of high marks I've seen of Robert Woodard.
Yeah, losing Trotter, we'll start there first. That stinks because like you talk about like when I think back to like how fun this 2025 Missouri defense was, like it's the guys in the secondary, it's Wilson and Young coming off the edge, it's Chris McClellan, kind of the unsung hero in the center of the defensive line, but it's also like Josiah Trotter cleaning up literally everything that somehow got past the defensive front, right? Like that dude was just incredible. Like he was fast, he hit really hard. I remember in the Auburn game, like on that final fourth down, he literally jumped over the right guard or the running back, I think it was, to hit Jackson Arnold's face. And like I remember texting a screenshot of that to our Auburn writer at 24/7. I'm like, can you ask Jackson Arnold like what was going through his brain when like all he looked up like right in his line of sight is like Josiah Trotter? Like I just like, can you imagine, right? And we knew pretty quickly that like, okay, Trotter's a dude that's going to play on Sundays. He's going to play on Sundays for a really, really long time, not just because of his family pedigree, but also he's just a damn good football player. And so there was maybe hope that Missouri could, you know, like talk about like the importance of like re-signing guys and keep them from going to the portal, or in Trotter's case, going to the NFL. Like we kind of thought that, okay, maybe he's a dude that they might be able to keep. And then you have an All-American at linebacker for 2026. He ultimately decided to go to the NFL. He's probably going to be a day 2 pick. He's going to play on Sundays for a really, really, really long time. How do you replace an All-SEC guy? I think you go get another All-SEC guy. And like that's what they got in Robert Woodyard Jr. And Missouri fans should know pretty well who this guy is, because if you guys remember in that Auburn game, this guy like lit up Missouri's offense like in more ways than one. Like it was really impressive what he was able to do that game. Like he recorded a game high 11 tackles. He had 9 solo stops. I think he had 4 tackles for loss, 2 pressures. Like he was just a menace that night against Missouri. And like the Tigers are still able to like pull out the win, which is great. But like Robert Woodyard Jr. like showed that night that like this is a dude that can really, really play. Like the advanced analytics love this guy. He is hyper productive, like second on Auburn's defense in total tackles this past season. And that was a really, really good Auburn defense. Like they were one of the best in the country with DJ Durkin at coordinator. So like, I don't want to say it's an exact 1-for-1 replacement Woodyard for Trotter, but it's about as close as you're probably going to get. Like this Woodyard guy, like him and Nick Rodriguez, I'm really excited to see those two guys, you know, play off each other and play with each other in 2026. Like I think that's going to be a really, really good tandem. And then behind them, you've got some really exciting young pieces that Missouri was able to retain and re-sign. Guys like Dante McClellan, who had that pick 6 in the season opener last year. Guys like Jeremiah Beasley, who, you know, 6'4", 240. Like this is a big, big dude that I think is going to play quite a bit of snaps, because Missouri loves to rotate their linebackers. So in addition to Woodyard and Rodriguez, you're probably going to see quite a bit of McClellan. You're probably going to see quite a bit of Jeremiah Beasley. And then they've also brought in some younger guys through the 2026 signing class. And then you mentioned Bobby Washington, a guy from Miami who hasn't played a ton, but that's a guy that's got a pretty strong family pedigree. And that's a guy that maybe just needed to find the right fit or could benefit from a change of scenery. He could work his way into the linebacker rotation as well. So it stinks to lose Trotter. But that's a position, I think, even as there's so much turnover on this defense, you feel really, really good about where Missouri's linebackers are at.
With the portal, too, I feel like schools like Miami are spending big money to bring in guys. So just because he was in the background, that doesn't mean, you know, that he doesn't have the talent to be a power 4 linebacker. So I'm really excited to see what Bobby Washington Jr. can do as well. I've talked to a lot of Miami fans and they were kind of sad that he was leaving because they also saw that potential in him. So I think that's a great get. Let's move to probably the area that hurts a little bit the most, which was, you know, losing Damon Wilson to the portal, not even just to the draft, to the portal, who went to that Miami that I was just talking about. Is it just me, or does it feel like we whiffed a little bit on the defensive line?
I think there's a couple of different ways you could look at it. I think you could make the case that Missouri needed to, like, they needed guys at the defensive interior. Like, they needed to replace, you know, Chris McClellan. They needed to replace Sterling Webb. And they also needed to replace both edge guys, right? In Zion Young and Damon Wilson. And like, those were, you know, among the many positions that Missouri really needed to target in the portal. I would have argued that those two were probably should have been the highest priority. And Missouri, like, they swung the bat. Like, they tried. Like, there was the, you know, the James Smith, Quay Russaw, the Alabama duo that hit the portal and they ended up at Ohio State. Like, they were on campus here in Columbia. There was a point in time where, as the portal continued to unfold and we weren't really hearing a ton from Damon Wilson, we had heard, and again, this is mostly from Missouri's side, that there was a possibility that maybe he could return to Missouri, because I think him and Drinkwitz had a really good relationship, just player to coach. It sounded like there maybe was some disagreement in terms of what the player wanted and what the agent wanted. And so we kind of thought like the longer the portal went on and the more, or maybe the less we heard about Damon Wilson, where he was ultimately visiting and where he wanted to go, that there was a chance that maybe he could return. And obviously if he would have returned, that would have really filled the edge defender role. So it wasn't for lack of trying that I think Missouri, you could say they whiffed. Like they definitely, they swung the bat on some guys to fill the interior role, to fill the edge defender role, and they missed. And I think that stinks, because what you're left with now is a lot of really inexperienced guys that are now going to have to step up. And so that's a little worrisome, because you don't really know what you have in these guys until they go play. Like we've seen some of these guys play a little bit, right? Like without Damon Wilson, Darius Smith is going to step in, and he's a guy that has struggled with injury, and he played almost 500 snaps this past season. And I thought he was pretty good in the time that we did get to see him. So you know what you have in that guy. In terms of replacing Zion Young, the next man up is Langdon Kitchen, who, Northwest Missouri State guy who transferred in, and he was productive, but he played less than 200 snaps last season. So it's like, okay, can you hold up over the course of an entire season, or is that going to be a little bit more of a rotational position? We just don't know. Right. And so then you've got some other younger guys that I know the staff is excited about, like Dayton Hopkins. Right. So is he going to be a true defensive end hand in the dirt, or is he going to be a little bit more of that outside linebacker jack position where he's a little bit more of a stand-up guy? These are some questions that we have that we hope to get answered when it comes to spring ball. And so, yeah, it stinks that Missouri whiffed on a lot of, some of the bigger names or some of the positions that we felt like they needed to fill in this portal window, but you're left with because it means that you're left with some inexperience. That said, at least on our website, I don't know how you guys maybe feel about this specifically, but because they were able to, they weren't able to sign some experienced guys out of the portal at these edge positions and the defensive front position, that means a lot of these younger guys are finally going to get to step up and play a little bit. And so I think there's a segment of the fan base, at least on our website, that is excited to see some of these younger guys step up, because, people look at the portal all the time and it's like, you keep bringing in these 1-year mercenaries, these recruits that you bring in just aren't going to play a ton. Right. And so then they'll end up transferring out, and then you're going to have to replace the depth behind the guys that you bring in. And it's just kind of this never ending vicious cycle. Well, I think one of the benefits of maybe Missouri missing at some of these positions is you're going to see Dayton Hopkins play quite a bit. You're going to see, Marquise Gracial play quite a bit more. You're going to see Jalen Marshall play quite a bit more. You're going to see Elias Williams. You're going to see Jason Dow. You're going to see more Darius Smith, right? And so that can be a little nerve-wracking, because you don't really know what you're going to get in these guys, but it can also be exciting because you don't know what you're going to get in these guys. Like maybe they're really, really good, and, Missouri will be the beneficiary of that. Maybe they won't, and the defensive front might struggle a little bit, when you get into SEC play. It's kind of one of those, again, circling back to the theme from the beginning of the show, we don't really know what this is going to look like until they actually start playing games. But, hopefully spring ball can at least offer a few hints about how the coaching staff feels about these guys.
100%. And I think that the transfer portal, and I was thinking about this too when you were talking about the defensive line, might have been the position that they've been hit since the transfer portal has started. They've been hit hardest at when it comes to their young guys leaving. Like you have Javion Hilson leaving. You obviously last year had Williams Winery leaving. Like they're young guys, because they have a lot of those. It's not that they haven't had good edge rushers, right? But the edge position specifically, they've had a lot of young edge rushers depart the program, and maybe this opportunity here could be good, because they've shown the ability to recruit some pretty darn good edge rushers, and I think that you kind of have to have faith in that regard. But Cody, appreciate you hopping on with us, breaking down this entire roster. I don't think we got to the kickers and punters.
That's a big one too.
But the kicker is a big one. Do you have any kicker thoughts? I guess I should ask you before I let you go.
I think they brought in the Florida State kicker / punter, Bruno Roos. And I think there's a lot of people that are excited about that, because the Missouri's new special teams coordinator, and maybe this is where most of the excitement stems from. Like Missouri has a new special teams coordinator now, John Papuchis from Florida State. He's also going to do some stuff with the defense, but they have a new guy at special teams. So they're going to have I think Bruno Roos is going to be the kicker. Actually, no, Blake Craig will be back at kicker. Bruno Roos is going to be the punter, but they've got a little bit of depth at kicker now. I think Oliver Robbins ended up sticking around too, so he's going to be one of the beneficiaries of the expanded scholarship allotments now. But so you bring in Bruno Roos, and then Mark Shinoda, I believe it was, another FCS transfer addition from Tennessee State. Those are going to be the two guys battling it out for punter. So in terms of who's returning kicks, I think it's easy to probably put Demarion Folks in there as kind of the like, okay, like this is a guy that's probably going to, just because he did it last year, right? And I'm sure that the coaches probably feel comfortable with him. But, returning kicks and punts could be an opportunity for a younger receiver, whether it's Folks, whether it's Sean Terry, maybe it's one of the 2026, signees, maybe it's one of the new transfer portal additions. Like that could be a role potentially for them to fill in 2026. I got a lot of special teams thoughts, but I think there's reason for people to be like excited, I think, about just the state of that phase of the game, if for no other reason that like Drinkwitz finally decided, okay, we're going to try something different, because what we had been trying there the last few years just wasn't working, and it was frustrating to watch over and over and over again. So the fact that he's trying something different, I think is cause for celebration. Whether or not it's better, again, we'll find out in the fall, but at least they're trying something different, right?
There was celebration in the Twitter world. There was a lot of celebration. There were accounts that were like change their names to not tweeting until Eric Link gets fired. So I don't know. It's just like you're happy to see that change, because it has been frustrating. I mean, we all saw those clips of not blocking the edge rusher on those field goals in Oklahoma and things like that. So very frustrating. So just getting Blake Craig back is huge, honestly. Just hopefully we've learned our lessons about, going for tackles up 40 against an FCS team.
Yeah, maybe throw that punter kicker in there when you're up 40 against the home opener. Maybe sit that one out, Blake. Yeah. I'm curious to see how an injury like that affects a kicker. I don't know if we've got a lot of studies on kicking and injuries like that, because it was a pretty big injury. Who would have thought at the beginning of the year that would have been the biggest injury impact for Mizzou? Like every single game, the injury of Blake Craig was felt by the Missouri Tigers. And I look, I knew that it was going to be a big deal, but at the time I was just like, it'll be fine, right? Like, yeah, you'll figure it's a kicker.
Well, the interesting part is like during the Kansas game in week 2, like it kind of benefited the offense, because Drink and Kirby Moore were a little bit more aggressive, right? Like fourth down, like we're going to go for it, right? They went like for it on like 4 or 5. I think they converted 4 or 5 fourth down attempts in that game. And so like that was also my first game on the beat, because like I showed up late, and that's just when I'd started at PowerMizzou. And I was like thinking, okay, like kicker's hurt. They're going to go for it. Like they're going to gamble on this stuff. And then they didn't really do that again the rest of the season, which was a little frustrating, because it's like, man, like you guys are good at this. Like go for it. Like the players are excited for it. Like you want to see them try it. And, there were some questionable, I guess, fourth down decision making over the course of the season. But yeah, like that first glimpse that we got after the Craig injury, it was like, okay, like the offense is going to be more aggressive. This is good. I like this. Let's go. Yeah,
I guess, when you run the same play on fourth down all the time too, is probably a little bit of a.
They saw the lack of competence by special teams. They're like, I don't know what to do here.
Got them between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I really triggered myself by bringing up special teams. I didn't realize how much of a reaction I was going to have by remembering the special teams from last season. But Cody, I appreciate you hopping on with us, breaking down the entire roster. We didn't get to GAs, unfortunately. We didn't hit the GAs, the new coaching staff, but we covered a lot of it. Appreciate all you do on the Mizzou beat. Appreciate your coverage of it, and appreciate you hopping on with us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we can like chat a little bit during the season too, because I was like listening through the season. I'm just like, man, like I wonder when I'll get the call. Like this will be kind of fun. But no, I appreciate you guys having me on and reaching out. And clearly, there's a lot going on when it comes to transfer portal stuff. So hopefully people who listen got at least like one thing out of all of my ramblings. And hopefully by after spring ball, we'll have a little bit better idea of what this team might look like in 2026.
We'll definitely bring you on. Before you came, we would bring Gerard on like once a year or something like that. So we'll have you back on.
Nice. I'm the new Gerard, so let's go.
I loved it that we had Gerard on I think it was the week of the game that he said he was leaving. He didn't tell us either.
We're like asking him all these questions, and we're talking about like tailgates, because he used to like come by the tailgate. You're more than welcome to also come by the tailgate. We're right up by Mizzou Arena. But nice. No, we had him on, and then all of a sudden Tucker and I were like, wait, what?
That Saturday it was like, actually, I'm out of here.
I've been like interviewing this whole time.
Yeah.
Hey man, that's good. You got to keep the big plays close to the vest, right? And only put them out when you need them.
I respected it, truthfully. I do respectfully. All right, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Mizzou That's Who, a special portal recap. Thank you guys so much for listening all the way to the end of the podcast. For Cody and Maggie, I'm Tucker Franklin. Thank you guys so much. We will talk to you again very soon.